That's the end of day 34 of the Undercover Policing Inquiry, Tranche 2, Phase 2. We have just... there is a closed hearing now taking place, which we're not allowed to attend. There have been a lot of closed hearings today. We were just saying before we went live that there's probably 2.5, 3 hours maybe at most of evidence that we've heard, because there's been a number of closed sessions throughout the day. There's a few things I've had to delete. There's been a number of reporting restriction orders, so sorry if it's a bit disjointed. I'm joined by Paul Gravett. We've been listening to the live evidence of Liz Fuller, a woman who was deceived into a long-term intimate relationship by the undercover police officer HN1, who used the cover name Matt Rayner. Today's evidence has been wide-ranging. It's been about her activism. It's about his role in her life. She didn't really know any other undercover cops. It didn't appear, though some of them seemed to know her. Paul, what did you make of the evidence?
I think she gave evidence very, very well. It was very genuine. It was done there was a certain style and the way she spoke with directness. And she has a very compelling story to tell. Obviously, I know some of it and have done for some time, whereas a lot of people won't be so familiar with that. And HN1, the spy who used the name Matt Rayner, we don't know his real name.
Probably Matt.
It will be Matt, the first name, I'm sure. He was known, someone I knew very, very well, a friend for many years. So there is obviously a very personal aspect to that as well. And her, I've known Liz for 30 years, since the days of London Booze Action Group. So it felt to me very close to the bone and personal, with her talking about him and the effect he had on her. Very moving stuff, to hear. Yeah.
I mean, I think she did a remarkably good job of dealing with the process. She refused to answer questions on certain topics. She pointed out, this is not for me to... this is not about me. This is about the undercover police officer. I'm not willing to answer questions on this topic or that topic. I've had enough of this one. I need a break. We're stopping. There was a section this afternoon. I need to be careful when I'm talking about this, because some of it is subject to restriction order. But there was a section where she was talking about the way in which HN1 took part in direct action. He sort of made out that he was just the driver, but she's like, no, he was very hands-on. She talked about the almost like drug-like high he seemed to get out of taking part in criminal damage. Yeah. It was really shocking. I mean, I think that it was the first time we'd really heard somebody talk like that about an undercover police officer. We've heard of other undercover police officers who took part in criminal damage, but that's sort of like this sort of real high, this sort of, the kind of thing you kind of imagine like a football hooligan sort of behaviour, like some sort of massive buzz that he was getting out of the activity. Yeah. And it really sort of, at the end, she talked about the kind of reconciling that the man that she knew who looked after her. She listed a bunch of things that he'd done for her that was really helpful, really useful, really been really good for her. Suggested he was kind and cared for her, and the cruelty and the despicable nature of what he put in his reports. Yeah. The absolute bullshit that he wrote in that letter to Jeff Shepherd after he'd withdrawn from the field years after they'd split up. Yeah. Just reconciling those two things. I mean, she even said something which we've heard a lot of former women who have been deceived by former undercover officers have said, of that, like, thinking for a long time that there was something real in the relationship really there, and then it kind of, it hitting home, no, that this was a completely fictional thing. That, I mean, some women have talked about that it's not love, it's hatred. That the real hatred. She talked about the fact that he referred to her as hated the police in one of the reports, something she disputed, but that and then also that she wouldn't have had sex with him if she'd known that he was a police officer. So what is that about? Is this some sort of revenge sex? I mean, there was afterwards there was a big discussion between a number of the women about this really hit home to them. This was something which a lot of them feel as well. It was talked about how he emotionally manipulated her, how he made her feel guilty. It was incredibly powerful. I don't want to go into the details about it. About why she finds guilt such a difficult emotion, and really just the way in which these officers really preyed on people who had a vulnerability in a certain way, exploited that vulnerability, and used these women in such a disgusting way. It was really powerful.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, immensely powerful, moving, and maybe very emotional at times as well. And I was I think I was the first person to maybe tell Liz that Matt Rayner, HN1, the person she had a relationship with, she thought was an activist, was a spy, very likely to be one. And then when I discovered through tracing his birth records that he stole the identity of a dead child, I remember telling her that then, and I think there was with her for a while a sense of he couldn't come to terms with it, and she I remember I think she once said, well, maybe that wasn't him, although there was only one Matt Rayner born in that month of that year in the whole of the UK. Maybe she said maybe he was born abroad, so he's not registered in this country, things like that. So I think it took a long time for her to come to terms with the fact that she'd been in a relationship with somebody who it was on the false grounds. It wasn't the person she believed. And then obviously discovering much later, what he'd done to her, it just really brought home the enormity of it. The effect it's had on her, and the way, I think from sensing, getting a feeling of the way, trying to put myself in the head of him, HN1, the way he's approaching this inquiry, he's trying to present himself as being more professional, maybe, than some of the others were. You can sort of sense that feeling, or I get, that he might think, hang on a minute, I've got to do this a bit differently and try and appear as being someone more responsible person about the way I did it. But any credibility he might have in that regard is just blown apart by what you've heard today, as well as, of course, all the stuff about him encouraging Jeff Shepherd back into direct action after Jeff refused initially to get involved. And what Liz said today was very compelling, because she said that there was at a meeting, or when they had Jeff actually walked out, left the room or the flat where they were, and walked away because he didn't want to get involved. And then Matt went out and cajoled him or whatever to get back and come back. I mean, if that isn't encouragement, what is? Yeah. What is? So. And then the other aspects of it, I think, which really underlines how pernicious he was to her, was that when she ended the relationship, he tried his hardest to get back together with her by saying, by making her feel guilt about it, saying he was depressed and wanted to carry on. He was miserable about not being back together. So that I think is truly appalling, because as like they were, he was married, children, or a child, and you kind of think, well, they would think, wouldn't you? Well, this would put this is put a line through that. We're finished with that aspect of what I've done, and now we'll just carry on. And in fact, it was as his end of his deployment was finishing anyway, or the end was in sight. Should be preparing for that. So why try persuade the person you're deceiving to carry on with a relationship that she's ended and wants to finish with. I mean, that to me is just incredible that they would do that. It's so cruel, so cruel. Because she could have got back together with him, and then he would have walked out on her, ended it himself. So it's appalling behaviour.
I mean, it's different because Belinda didn't want to break up with Bob Lambert, but I mean, it really reminded me of how Bob Lambert kept that relationship going right to the bitter end. He said goodbye to everybody else. He still would, and it was because he wanted the sex. He wanted the emotional support that he was getting from Belinda. He wanted to use her, and I mean, and that's the first thing that jumped into my mind. That's what HN1 wanted. He wanted to keep using Liz in that way, and it's just appalling. Just that thing on Jeff Shepherd. I mean, I think she really smashed this nonsense that HN1 has come out with in his written statement, where he says he was an acolyte. He was in the shadow of Jeff Shepherd, and she's like, that's just a nonsense. They were, if anything, they were equals. But if you really want to push it, he was convinced. He was dragging Jeff back into that world, which Jeff had made a very strong commitment not to do anymore. Really. I mean, I think there's a lot. We're about to hear a lot of lies over the next 3 days, but I think Liz did a really good job of just smashing some of them. There's one thing I want to talk about with the closed sessions. Now, a lot of people don't really understand why a lot of the closed sessions really happen, and it often isn't because of secrecy from the state. I mean, sometimes it is, but often it's the secrecy from the individual who's the witness. They don't want... I don't know why this thing does this. It's so annoying. Why it's the witness doesn't want to have certain things broadcast. Now, we had a session earlier where there was something apparently that happened in closed that Missing says has to be put to HN1, and it should be put to HN1 in open. So essentially, it appears he's pressurising Liz for something that she wanted to be enclosed to be brought out into the open. Now, I would never be the one to say that I want more things closed, but if a witness has decided they want to keep something closed, I think it is highly inappropriate of the chair to try and encourage her or cajole her in whatever way that he's trying to do to have that thing be held in open. We'll find out on Thursday if that's the case. It won't be questioned about it tomorrow, but it might be the case on Thursday. I really hope that Mitting sees sense on this and follows Liz's wishes, whatever they may be. Now, I mean, I'm very interested to know what that's about. I think we all are, you know what I mean? We can follow things closely, but we must never lose sight. The most important thing is the... Is the well-being of those who've been most affected by these deployments, and if that means some things don't get to come out into the public, well, so be it. Do you know what I mean? It takes incredibly powerful people to do this sort of stuff in public, and if they can't face certain parts of it, I think Liz has been incredibly brave to really. I mean, as I said earlier, rip her heart out and throw it in the middle of the room, in order to satisfy the inquiry in its aims of getting to the truth of what really happened. But I mean, she shouldn't be forced to go any further than she's comfortable with.
No, you're right. I mean, it was so incredibly moving today to hear her speak, especially as it's the first time really in public, and no one could be failed to be moved by that. You need to have a heart of stone, and I like to think that even John Mitting doesn't have that, so he will comply with her wishes, and if not force something that said in a closed session out into open, it should no way should he say that should go ahead like that. So we'll find out as you say on Thursday. But I think meanwhile I think Liz is back tomorrow as well in the morning for a hearing then too, I believe, as well, from what I heard just as we were leaving the room. So we'll have to see what happens tomorrow. But obviously, HN1 Matt Rayner will be giving evidence starting tomorrow, and it's going to be interesting to see what he has to say. Well, to hear what he has to say. I only wish we could see the man. Fortunately, Mitting has shown some humanity and is allowing Liz to watch him as he gives evidence along with her legal representatives. So that's one thing to be grateful for from him. But the rest of us are denied that. I mean, when I gave evidence yesterday, a lot of it was about Rayner, and I said at the end that I wished that his real name would be disclosed, as Mitching promised all those years ago, and then we should be allowed to watch him as he gives evidence. I should, and others, but then I finished by saying, if nothing else, if we don't let us do it, please allow Liz to watch him, and he did agree, at least to that. So that's something, that at least that I feel that that I feel happy and content amongst myself that that she's not being denied something that is totally right and just for her.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't realise she was going to be giving evidence in the morning. That makes sense, actually, given the way things ended just now. I know that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's going to be 3 days of HN1. As you say, we'll only be able to hear the voice. It will be live streamed. If you are able to follow on YouTube, you'll be able to hear his voice. I'm hoping it's not going to be modulated. It's very difficult to follow when things are modulated. Haven't made it clear yet. I don't know why this bubble appears. Very annoying. I will try and sort out my laptop so that doesn't happen.
The thing about his voices, of course, is uniquely amongst. I don't know about uniquely, but it may be uniquely amongst UCOs, is we do actually have his voice recorded because of the footage of him in the play from 1995. So we kind of already know his voice anyway. And so what point would there be now in modulating that voice? I mean, that's the logical reasoning, but obviously, as we know from this inquiry, there's no logical reason to it.
I mean, I can be very sure that if they've applied for him to have any sort of anonymity, his lawyers will have pushed the hardest possible way for the most things. So, but it does make it very difficult to follow. Yeah, it does make it very, very difficult to follow. So we will be hearing from Liz in the morning. I did think this was the end of us hearing from activists, but there will be a little bit more from Liz in the morning. I will cover that. Is there anything you want to say about anything more you want to say about HN1 for about the next 3 days?
Well, I mean, in a way, it's a kind of summation of me, in a sense, for everything of the last 5 or 10 years of working towards is having him up on that stage, because there were several people, spies, who I encountered as an activist in this period, but I think there's something about him that stands out amongst them, his deployment in many aspects of it, which kind of makes it unique. So it will be really interesting to hear from him and what he has to say. And how he approaches it. So I will be listening, obviously only listening avidly to what's being said, by the man I knew for 5 or 6 years and deceived me all that time. Thanks, Tom.
No worries. Well, thanks for watching. I'll be doing a Twitter Spaces this evening. Join if you can. I'm not sure what time it'll be. Hopefully a lot earlier than it was last night. Some people. It was late. It was 10 p.m. start. So I mean, hopefully it won't be that again. But the people are on about going to the pub. I'm doing dry January, but I might go to the pub anyway. We'll see how it goes. Thanks for joining. I'm going to get rid of these bloody thumb things. So annoying. Why does it do that? If somebody could tell me why it does that, that would be really handy, because I find it very, very irritating. All right. Cheers.